I step through the polished brass doors of the High Grove, Chicago's crown jewel of fine dining, and feel the restaurant's hushed atmosphere envelop me like a cashmere wrap. Crystal chandeliers cascade from coffered ceilings, catching light in prismatic displays above mahogany tables dressed in crisp white linen. Floor-to-ceiling windows frame Lake Michigan, its evening waters glimmering like scattered diamonds against the darkening sky. Miss Ross, welcome back. The general manager, a distinguished man in his 50s with salt and pepper hair, steps forward with practiced grace. Your private dining room is ready. I nod, conscious of my family trailing behind me. My father Harold stops mid-stride, his eyebrows lifting toward his receding hairline. Palmer? Dad's voice carries that familiar note of bewilderment. At 61, his eyes still hold the sharp intelligence that built his modest accounting practice, though confusion clouds them now. They know you here? Before I can answer, my mother Elaine exchanges glances with my older sister. Mom's hand nervously adjusts her pearl necklace, a 35th anniversary gift from Dad. At 59, she still maintains the composed elegance I've always admired, but uncertainty flickers across her face. Must be a mix-up, Marissa stage whispers, loud enough for me to hear. At 33, my sister has perfected the art of the backhanded comment. As communications director for a mid-sized marketing firm, she wears her title like armor. Tonight she's dressed in a designer suit that probably cost a month's rent, or what my family believes is my month's rent. Dylan, my 25-year-old brother, scans the room with the analytical precision fresh MBA graduates often possess, mentally calculating the cost of everything from the imported marble floors to the vintage champagne being poured at a nearby table. This place must clear 7 figures monthly, he murmurs, more to himself than anyone else. Behind them all, Connor, Marissa's husband of 3 years, checks his watch subtly, his eyes lingering a beat too long on the menu prices displayed near the host stand. Right this way. The manager continues, either oblivious to or deliberately ignoring my family's reaction. He leads us through the main dining area, past tables of Chicago's elite sipping wines worth more than what my family thinks I make in a month. When we reach a private room in the back, my father stops short. A gold plaque beside the heavy oak door reads, Ross family. His eyes meet mine, a question forming. Happy birthday, Dad, I say quietly. Inside, the table gleams beneath a private chandelier, each place setting arranged with military precision. A bouquet of my father's favorite lilies scents the air. As we settle into plush chairs, the conversation begins to unravel just as I'd anticipated. Palmer, honey, Mom starts, her tone the same one she's used since I was in college. This is very sweet, but is this sensible? You're still getting established, and places like this are so expensive. Marissa jumps in, leaning toward me conspiratorially. I could have gotten you a discount at Gaston's through my client connection. You should have asked. I take a slow sip of water, letting the cool liquid ease the familiar tightness in my throat. This is the same song, different verse. Last Christmas, Dylan had wrapped a career advice book for me, complete with a highlighted chapter on moving from freelance to full-time. Marissa routinely offers to connect me with real clients, despite never asking about my existing ones. My apartment's closer than you'd think, I say, instead of correcting them. My 1-bedroom in Evanston isn't chosen for budget constraints, but for its proximity to my company's warehouse facility. The deliberate misdirection feels both protective and painful. Still in that small place? Mom asks. You know, there are some nice affordable options opening up in Wicker Park. I've perfected the art of deflection over the years, cultivated since college when my boyfriend paraded me around to his wealthy friends as the scholarship girl, his personal project, his token of charitable interest. The memory still burns, a lesson learned in the hardest way about how people change when they think they know your worth. It's going well enough. I say my standard response to questions about work. The words taste stale on my tongue, worn from repetition. The sommelier approaches with a leather-bound wine list, and Marissa reaches for it with the confidence of someone accustomed to taking charge. Let me handle this, Palmer, she says, the implicit message clear. I couldn't possibly know enough to make a wise choice. I slide my hand forward, taking the menu with a polite smile. I've got this covered tonight. I scan the familiar pages, then look up. We'll have the Chablis Grand Cru 2018, please. Marissa's perfectly shaped eyebrows arch high. That's a $300 bottle. It's Dad's birthday, I reply, meeting her gaze steadily. Nothing but the best. Dad reaches over to squeeze my hand, genuine emotion crossing his face. For a flicker of a moment, I see something new there, not just fatherly affection, but a glimmer of pride. When the waiter places elegant menus before us, Dylan flips his open and chokes slightly. $500 per person prefix, he mutters, eyes widening as they dart to me. Connor leans toward Marissa, whispering something that makes her glance at me with renewed suspicion. I watch their reactions, feeling the familiar push-pull of family dynamics shifting under the chandelier light. Marissa straightens, her posture reinforcing her self-appointed role as the successful sister. Dylan's competitive nature surfaces in the quick calculations I can practically see running behind his eyes. Mom and Dad exchange glances, clearly uncertain about the unfolding dynamic but unwilling to interfere. I take another sip of water and remind myself of what matters. Tonight is about Dad, I say firmly, not about proving anything. But as the first course arrives on hand-painted porcelain plates, I wonder if that's entirely true. 10 minutes later, I excuse myself from the table, my smile firmly in place as I catch the eye of Thomas, our server. I need to speak with the chef about my father's seafood allergy. I explain to my family. I'll be right back. Thomas leads me toward the kitchen, but as we round the corner, his pager buzzes. Excuse me, Miss Ross. I'll tell Chef you're coming. He hurries ahead while I pause to check a text from my office manager. As I slip my phone back into my clutch, voices drift from the dining room. I step closer to the archway, my hand bracing against the cool wall. What is she trying to prove? This place is ridiculous. Marissa's voice, sharp with judgment. Probably maxed out her credit cards. Connor's baritone, always ready to reinforce his wife's opinions. She lives in a one-bedroom in Evanston. Bye. Dylan's laughter cuts through the air. Maybe she's dating the manager. My chest tightens, each word a needle pricking my carefully maintained composure. I've heard variations of these comments for years, but tonight they land differently, harder, clearer, impossible to dismiss as simple misunderstanding. She's always been thoughtful. Dad says, his voice quiet but firm. Let her do this. I close my eyes, drawing a slow breath through my nose. The air tastes of saffron and truffle from the kitchen behind me, a reminder of why I'm here. This night isn't about their approval, it's about Dad's birthday. I straighten my spine, smooth my expression, and walk back into the dining room with a smile that betrays nothing. Chef is preparing something special, I announce, settling into my chair. Marissa leans forward, voice honeyed with false concern. Palmer, is this really in your budget? We could go somewhere more appropriate. Her eyes flick to the delicate hand-painted china, the crystal stemware, the silver cutlery, assessing each item's value while pretending to worry about my finances. Yeah. Connor nods, his wedding band glinting under the chandelier as he gestures around the room. We don't need all this fancy stuff. Harold's fine with his usual steakhouse. Their tag team approach is nothing new. For years they've worked in tandem, Marissa launching the criticism while Connor follows with reinforcement. What's different tonight is that I can see the pattern with painful clarity, like studying a familiar photograph from a new angle. They've always seen me as the family failure. 5 to do. The thought forms with startling certainty as the server arrives with our first course. Butter-poached Maine lobster with lemon beurre blanc. Each portion rests on hand-painted china worth more than what they believe I make in a week. Dad takes his first bite, eyes closing in appreciation. Despite her words, Marissa doesn't hesitate before digging in, her expression betraying her enjoyment even as she prepares her next critique. I make 6 figures, and wouldn't waste money like this, she says between bites, speaking to the table at large rather than directly to me. I remain quiet, focused on ensuring Dad enjoys his birthday dinner. $4,200. The total flashes through my mind, 8 guests at $500 each, plus wine and the custom birthday dessert. More than 3 months' rent for the apartment my family believes I struggle to afford. Dad notices the tension, his eyes meeting mine across the table. Palmer, tell me about that charity event you helped with last month, he says, an obvious attempt to redirect the conversation. Before I can answer, Dylan cuts in. You know, if you're trying to build your client base, you should focus on corporate events. Better stability than these one-off charity gigs. I take a sip of wine, watching Marissa reach for her second glass while complaining about its cost. The absurdity of the situation brings an unexpected smile to my lips, Not bitter, but somehow knowing. I've spent years protecting them from the knowledge of my success, afraid of how it might change our relationship. But watching them now, enjoying luxury while simultaneously criticizing it, I remember what my first business mentor told me. Your worth isn't determined by others' perception. Tonight they'll finally see me. Thomas approaches, his attention focused on me rather than the other guests. Is everything to your satisfaction, Miss Ross? Perfect as always, Thomas, I reply. Minutes later, the chef himself emerges from the kitchen, white coat pristine as he approaches our table. Miss Ross, a pleasure to see you again. I wanted to personally confirm that we've prepared your father's dessert without any trace of seafood, as requested. Thank you, Chef Marcel. I appreciate your attention to detail. As the chef returns to the kitchen, I notice the hostess discreetly approaching. Miss Ross, is everything to your liking? Is there anything else you need? We're well taken care of, thank you. I catch Mom watching these interactions, her head tilted slightly, a new awareness dawning in her eyes. She's beginning to sense there's more to my story than they've assumed. The server arrives with dessert, molten Valrhona chocolate soufflé, followed by a birthday cake that makes Dad's eyes widen. Vanilla bean and salted caramel layer cake, with Happy 61st Harold, written in delicate gold leaf. This is the most thoughtful birthday I've ever had, Dad says, reaching for my hand across the table, genuine emotion in his voice. The warmth of his appreciation fills me with something I haven't felt in years, a sense of being truly seen, if only for a moment. The feeling is almost enough to overshadow Marissa's continued commentary. Must be nice to blow money on desserts when you should be saving for a real place. She mutters to Connor, loud enough for me to hear. I meet her gaze across the table, no longer flinching from her judgment. The decision crystallizes in my mind, clear and certain. It's time they knew. The leather portfolio arrives with the quiet gravity of a judge's verdict. Our server Thomas places it precisely between my father and me, a silent acknowledgement that leaves the question of responsibility hanging in the air. Marissa lunges for it before anyone else can move. I'll put this on my corporate card. We'll split it later. Her tone carries that familiar note of authority, the same one she's used since we were kids playing house and she appointed herself mother. Palmer can cover the tip if that's not too much, Dylan smirks, sliding his water glass between his palms. Despite his fresh MBA and designer watch, my brother still wears the same expression he did at 12 when he'd found a clever way to corner me in a game. Connor leans back in his chair, voice deliberately loud enough for nearby servers to hear. Maybe we should start a collection for Palmer's budget. What's the going rate for freelance party planning these days? Enough for a decent tip? The family tension crackles like static electricity. From nearby tables, diners glance over, their expressions a mixture of discomfort and the particular fascination that comes from witnessing someone else's discomfort. A woman in her 60s catches my eye with a sympathetic wince before quickly looking away. Actually, I say, my voice calm despite the heat rising in my chest, I've got this covered. I've got this covered. My purse sits heavy in my lap, its contents about to change everything. With deliberate slowness, I reach inside and withdraw my wallet. The black metal card feels cool against my fingertips as I place it on the table. The matte black American Express Centurion card catches the light differently than plastic, absorbing rather than reflecting, its titanium weight making a distinctive sound as it connects with the linen tablecloth. Silence drops over our table like a heavy curtain. Is that a fake card from the internet? Marissa asks, her voice pitched higher than normal. Those replicas look so real now. I meet her gaze directly. It's quite real. Thomas approaches, his professional demeanor slipping momentarily when he spots the card. His posture straightens subtly, shoulders pulling back as he collects the portfolio and my card, with a slight bow of his head. Minutes later, he returns with an apologetic expression. I apologize, Miss Ross, but Amex requires additional verification. Marissa's triumphant smirk blooms across her face. See? I knew it was fake. I nod professionally, having anticipated this moment. Of course. It's the first time I've used this card at the High Grove. For transactions exceeding certain thresholds at luxury establishments, American Express Centurion service requires additional security protocols. Thomas explains, his tone formal but respectful, especially for first-time use at a new venue. Marissa leans toward Connor, whispering with theatrical inadequacy. This is so embarrassing for her. The heat in my chest spreads to my face, but I maintain my composure. Please proceed with the verification. Thomas nods and steps away with my card to make the call. The table remains uncomfortably quiet, my family watching me with expressions ranging from skepticism to confusion. Dad shifts in his seat, looking like he wants to say something but can't find the words. Mom studies her hands. Dylan's eyes narrow as he reassesses me, his business school training kicking in as he recalculates whatever mental spreadsheet he keeps about his family members. Thomas returns alongside a woman in a tailored black suit, the cashier from the front of house. "Miss Ross, we're so sorry for the delay," she says, her tone deferential in a way that makes Marissa's eyebrows rise even higher. The Amex voice authorization has been completed. The transaction is approved. Thomas holds out a new leather folio. "The approval code is A6J9Q2, he adds, his voice carrying a new note of respect. I sign the receipt with practiced ease, adding a generous tip. The movement feels natural after countless business dinners and event settlements. As I return the pen, I notice subtle signals passing between the staff. Small nods, a particular quality of attention now directed toward our table. My family watches the interaction with increasing confusion. Mom's eyes dart between me and the servers, her brow furrowed. Dad looks both proud and bewildered, as if someone had just informed him his ordinary house cat could speak 3 languages. The energy shifts yet again, as a man in his early 40s with impeccable posture approaches our table. His tailored suit and commanding presence mark him as management before he even speaks. "Miss Ross," he says, with professional deference. "I'm Daniel Alvarez, General Manager. I've just realized who you are. I should have recognized you immediately." My family's confused expressions deepen, a synchronized response that would be comical under different circumstances. Daniel continues, "Ross Signature Events produced the United Healthcare Gala last month." I offer a modest nod, feeling the weight of 7 pairs of eyes fixed on me. "Your team's professionalism was remarkable," Daniel adds. The governor still mentions it. Marissa's expression transforms from smug dismissal to stunned disbelief, her face tightening as if she's been slapped. The satisfaction I'd anticipated from this moment tastes different than expected. Less sweet, more complex. Daniel gestures to a server who approaches with a bottle in an ice bucket. "Please accept this Dom Perignon 2012 with our compliments, as an apology for the verification delay." As Daniel withdraws, my family stares at me as if seeing a stranger wearing my face. The champagne cork pops with a festive surrender that seems at odds with the tension. Dylan leans toward Marissa, his whisper audible in the silence. "What's Ross Signature Events?" Connor pulls out his phone beneath the table, thumbs moving rapidly. His eyes widen as he tilts the screen toward Marissa. The color drains from my sister's face as she reads whatever Connor has found. Her eyes lift to meet mine, filled with questions, and something that looks uncomfortably like hurt. I take a deliberate sip of the champagne, allowing its complex notes to settle on my tongue before I speak. "I suppose we should talk about what I actually do for a living." The private dining room has grown silent except for the gentle clink of crystal and silver. My family's expressions range from confusion to disbelief, with Dylan's mouth slightly agape and Marissa's perfectly composed face showing the first cracks I've seen in years. Ross Signature Events started in 2019. I begin, my voice steadier than I expected. After 3 years of working for other companies, I saw a gap in the corporate events market. No one was delivering truly seamless experiences. Dad leans forward, his weathered hands clasped on the table. The confusion in his eyes is gradually replaced by something I haven't seen directed at me in years, genuine curiosity. My first clients were small tech startups, Brightware Solutions and Nexus Innovations. I traced the rim of my glass with my index finger. They wanted launch parties that would impress investors without seeming wasteful. I rented a warehouse space in Evanston, hired 2 part-time assistants, and delivered both events under budget. Mom's hand flies to her pearl necklace, her usual nervous gesture. "You did all that while living in that tiny apartment?" "The apartment is 3 blocks from our logistics hub," I explain. "The building may be older, but the location is perfect for what I need." I continue outlining our growth trajectory, watching their faces transform with each benchmark. 6 clients the first year, 15 the second. Then the turning point landing Continental Healthcare's annual leadership summit, which put us on the map with Fortune 500 companies. Last year we produced 78 events across 17 states. I say, the facts flowing easily now. We've grown from those two part-timers to a core team that travels nationally. Dad's expression undergoes the most dramatic transformation. The confusion gives way to understanding. Then pride blooms across his features, softening the lines around his eyes. He sits straighter, his chest expanding slightly. Excellence in every detail? I say, looking directly at him. Just like you taught us, Dad. I've built the entire business on that principle. The silence that follows feels weightless, almost reverent. Then Marissa clears her throat. Why didn't you ever mention this at family gatherings? Her voice carries a new edge, not her usual condescension but something more complex. All those times we asked how work was going, you just said fine or busy. Connor nods, his eyes narrowed slightly. Seems strange to hide success from your own family. Dylan, never one to miss an opportunity to showcase his MBA knowledge, leans forward. What's your profit margin? With that kind of operation, you should talk to me about tax strategies. There are several structures that could optimize your client. We're your family, Marissa interrupts, her tone softening into something that sounds almost hurt. We deserve to know. The accusation hangs in the air. They're trying to make my silence the issue rather than their assumptions. It's a clever pivot, one I might have used myself in negotiations. I fold my napkin carefully, gathering my thoughts. You're right, I acknowledge finally. I bear some responsibility for this misunderstanding. Their collective surprise at my admission is almost comical. When I started the company, I wasn't sure it would succeed. The first 8 months, I barely broke even. I lived on ramen and worked 18-hour days. I look at each of them in turn. I didn't want to disappoint anyone if it failed. Mom's eyes soften. We would never. By the time it became clear the business was viable, I continued gently. Something had shifted in how we talked about careers. Remember Thanksgiving 3 years ago? Recognition flickers across Dad's face. I mentioned landing the Northwestern Medical Conference, and Dylan asked if I was still doing those little parties. Marissa suggested I apply for an events coordinator position at her firm, because it had actual benefits. Color rises in Marissa's cheeks. At some point, I say, keeping my voice free of accusation, it seemed easier to let you believe what you wanted. The truth of it settles between us not as a weapon but as a simple fact. Success didn't change me. I add, meeting Marissa's gaze directly. Why would it change how you see me? Marissa's eyes glisten. We were just trying to motivate you. I always knew you had potential, Connor says, though his newly respectful tone contradicts years of dismissive comments. Dylan straightens his tie. With your current scale, you should consider diversifying investments. I could recommend some funds that... The door opens, cutting him off as Daniel Alvarez returns with a bottle of dessert wine. Thought you might enjoy this with your final course, Miss Ross. The 2015 Sauternes pairs perfectly with the chocolate soufflé. He places the bottle on the table with a flourish. And congratulations again on the Event Planners Association Award last month. Best Corporate Production of the Year, quite an achievement. Thank you, Daniel. I smile politely. And your team has grown so impressively. 50 employees now, correct? We're only 47 employees, not 50. I correct him automatically. Though we're adding 3 positions next quarter. Daniel nods appreciatively and withdraws. The correction hangs in the air, a small detail that reveals more about me than grand pronouncements could. I've never needed to exaggerate success. The truth has always been enough. Current projects? Dad asks, his voice gentle with new understanding. We're handling the Art Institute's annual gala next month. I reply, warming to his genuine interest. 3 museum fundraisers, the Chicago Symphony Orchestra's Donor Appreciation Event, and corporate conferences for Keller Williams and Abbott Laboratories. I pause, then continue casually. This year's revenue projection is around $52 million. Harold nearly chokes on his champagne. Mom's eyes well with tears. Business Chicago ran a profile last quarter, I add, estimating my personal net worth above $33 million. Their numbers were reasonably accurate. Marissa sets down her glass with exaggerated care, her hand trembling slightly. The complete silence that follows is profound. What strikes me most is how unchanged I feel in this moment. The weight of secrecy has lifted, but I'm still the same Palmer who entered this restaurant 2 hours ago. The same person they've always known, just more completely seen. The contrast between my composed demeanor now and the years of calculated silence feels almost surreal. Marissa's perfectly maintained composure finally cracks. A tear slips down her cheek. I thought I was helping you, she whispers. Connor studies the menu prices with new understanding, as if recalculating years of interactions through a completely different lens. Dylan's MBA confidence has visibly diminished, his shoulders slightly hunched as he stares into his water glass. The quiet that settles over us isn't angry or triumphant, it's contemplative. A family recalibrating, adjusting to a new reality. I'm still the same person I was an hour ago, I say softly. Dad reaches across the table and squeezes my hand. His eyes shine with emotion. I'm so proud of you. 3 simple words I've waited years to hear. Not for the business success, but for the recognition of who I've always been capable, determined, worthy of his pride. The beginning of reconciliation shimmers between us, tentative and real. Underneath it all, an awkwardness lingers, the necessary discomfort of authentic connection, replacing comfortable misconceptions. I signal for another round of champagne. We have much more to discuss. I still don't understand why you kept all this hidden from us. Marissa says, her voice softer now but edged with something I recognize immediately. The subtle art of making someone else's choices about her. We could have celebrated your accomplishments together, Palmer. As a family? The sommelier refills our champagne glasses. I notice how my sister's fingers trace the delicate stem of her flute, a nervous habit from childhood that appears when she's recalibrating. The family has fallen silent since my revelation, the $33 million figure hanging in the air between us like an uninvited guest. Did you think we couldn't handle it? Dylan leans forward, his MBA confidence returning in small increments. That we wouldn't understand your business world? Connor nods along, his loyalty to Marissa transparent. Do you think you're better than us now? Their questions land like perfect arrows, each one finding the soft spots in my armor. My father watches me carefully, concern replacing the pride I'd seen moments before. My mother's eyes are bright with unshed tears. Palmer. Marissa continues, pressing her advantage when I don't immediately respond. We've always been there for you, always. A pang of doubt catches me off guard. Have I been unfair? The question surfaces unexpectedly, like a bubble rising through still water. For years, I've maintained this careful distance, constructing elaborate barriers around my success. Watching my family enjoy the luxury of this evening while simultaneously being bewildered by it, I wonder if the walls I built were necessary or self-inflicted. The question must show on my face because Marissa reaches across the table, covering my hand with hers. You could have trusted us. I take a breath, finding my center again. The moment of vulnerability passes, replaced by the clear-eyed perspective that built my company. I wanted to be loved for who I am. I say finally, my voice steady, not what I have. Their expressions shift subtly as my words sink in. Junior year of college, I started a small event business out of my dorm room. My roommate Bethany was my biggest supporter until I landed the alumni weekend contract. After that, she'd introduce me as my entrepreneur roommate instead of just Palmer. I swirl the champagne in my glass, watching the bubbles race to the surface. By senior year, she was asking me to invest in her boyfriend's app idea. I tell them about Marcus Wheeler, a client who hired me for his company's product launch. We'd worked together for weeks as equals until his assistant accidentally copied me on an email where he referred to me as the $30 million event planner and instructed his team to give her whatever she wants. The next morning, he couldn't look me in the eye, started agreeing with everything I suggested. I set my glass down carefully. I didn't want that to happen with us. I didn't want our dynamic to change. The irony isn't lost on me that success made me more protective of authentic relationships, not less. That the more I achieved, the more I feared losing the connections that mattered. A silence falls over the table, broken only by the subtle clink of silverware against china from nearby diners. Do you remember last Christmas? I ask, my voice quiet but clear. When I mentioned expanding into the corporate retreat market? Marissa's cheeks flush slightly. You called it my little hobby and asked if I'd considered going back to school. The words aren't delivered with anger, just precision. And Thanksgiving before that, Dylan offered to send me job listings from his alumni network. Said it was time I found something with stability. Dylan studies the tablecloth, his fingers tracing the edge of his napkin. When I moved to Evanston, Connor joked that I couldn't afford a real Chicago address. I turned to my brother-in-law, whose discomfort is visible now. At Dad's birthday last year, you asked if I needed help with my student loans. Each example lands with quiet impact. I'm not raising my voice, not accusing, simply reflecting back their own words, now cast in a different light. The apartment jokes, the career advice books, the networking offers with real businesses. I look around the table, meeting each pair of eyes in turn. You decided who I was without ever really asking. The weight of recognition settles over them. Not the recognition of my success, but of their assumptions. Mom breaks the silence first, her voice thick with emotion. We failed you. Dad reaches for her hand, then looks at me. We never really asked about your work, did we? Not properly. To my surprise, Marissa's eyes are wet, but these tears seem different from her earlier calculation. I used to be jealous of how free you seemed, she admits. While I was climbing corporate ladders and proving myself, you seemed so unconcerned with status. Now I understand why. She wipes at a tear. I'm not jealous anymore, I'm just proud. Dylan clears his throat. I never gave you the respect you deserved, I thought. He stops, restarts. I assumed success looked like my path. I never considered you were already there. We all played our parts in this. I offer, feeling the family dynamics shift and resettle like sand after a wave. I could have been more forthcoming, but I needed to know you saw me, not my bank account. The transformation is visible: respect without distance, pride without patronizing. The power balance settles into something healthier, something that feels like truth. I should tell you about my current project. I say, a smile forming. Next month, I'll produce your 36th anniversary celebration, the most important event of my year. Dad's eyes widen, then crinkle with emotion. Don't overdo it, Palmer, he jokes, his voice rough. I laugh, the sound genuine and free. Dad, I mount $12 million shows for pharmaceutical companies. For my parents, there's no ceiling. Daniel returns with a bottle of rare dessert wine, a personal favorite he knows I appreciate. As he pours, I raise my glass. To family, I say simply. To Palmer, Dad counters, and to family. In their eyes, I see it. Finally, I am seen for who I truly am. Not the struggling freelancer, not the secret millionaire, but simply their daughter, their sister, Palmer Ross, complete and undivided. A month later, I stand near the bar, champagne flute in hand, watching as my professional team executes Dad and Mom's 36th anniversary celebration with flawless precision. The historic Chicago venue, a renovated 1,920 seconds, theater with soaring gilt ceilings and original Art Deco fixtures, glows in amber light that catches the crystal and silver adorning each table. Mom looks radiant in midnight blue, her hand rarely leaving Dad's as they greet their closest friends. The guest list is intimate, just 30 people who matter most to them, but the experience rivals galas I've produced for governors and CEOs. That's Palmer Ross. I overhear a waiter telling his colleague, voice hushed with respect, she produces the city's top events. The comment washes over me without triggering my old defenses. 1 month ago, those words would have sent me scanning the room to see if my family had heard, calculating how to minimize the moment. Tonight, I simply smile. Marissa approaches, carrying 2 dessert plates. Tried the chocolate thing yet? It's insane. She hands me one, then gestures toward Mom and Dad. They look happy. They do. I take the plate, noting how naturally Marissa has stepped into helping tonight rather than competing. She spent the afternoon arranging place cards and greeting early arrivals, tasks she once would have considered beneath her communications director credentials. Across the room, Dylan converses with my operations manager, notebook open, genuinely interested in the business strategy that built Raw's signature events. No condescending advice, no assumptions, just respectful questions from one professional to another. We've reconfigured but grown stronger. The shift started that night at the High Grove and solidified in small moments since Sunday dinners where my expertise was sought rather than dismissed, phone calls where achievements were shared openly, visits to my office where my parents proudly introduced me without qualification. I've been journaling. I tell Marissa, surprising myself with the admission, writing about how hiding my success was actually its own form of control. She raises an eyebrow. How so? By managing what you all knew about me, I was trying to control how you'd treat me. I take a sip of champagne. But authenticity requires complete honesty, even when it's uncomfortable. Being seen fully is terrifying and liberating. The weight I'd carried for years has lifted. No more separate selves, no more calculated omissions. The freedom shows in how I move through rooms now, shoulders relaxed, smile genuine. I notice a young woman from the catering staff watching me. She's maybe 23, with the hyper-vigilant eyes of someone with talent who doesn't believe in herself yet. Throughout the evening, I've seen her quietly solve problems before they became visible, then deflect when her supervisor tried to praise her. "Excuse me," I say to Marissa, then cross to where the young woman stands. "The timing on the dessert service was perfect," I tell her. "That was your call?" She blushes. "Just doing my job, Miss Ross." "I recognize that look," I say quietly. "Hiding accomplishments won't protect you. Your worth isn't in what you do, but living authentically frees you." Something shifts in her expression, recognition, perhaps. I hand her my card. "Call me Monday. I could use someone with your instincts." Later, as dessert plates are cleared and coffee is served, Dad taps his glass for attention. He asks me to join him and Mom at the center of the room, his arm circling my shoulders when I step forward. "Our Palmer has made this night extraordinary," he says, his voice thick with emotion. "But her greatest gift wasn't this beautiful party, it was finally letting us see her." I look out at our family and friends, all witnesses to our journey. "A month ago I showed you what I do," I say. "But tonight is about who we are, together. Thank you for seeing me, all of me, and still showing up." Marissa approaches, giving me a genuine side hug. "Next time, warn me you're a millionaire," she whispers. I laugh. "No need. I'm still me. I'm—" Dad raises his glass. "To success measured not in dollars but in character." The next morning, I stand in my new downtown office overlooking the Chicago skyline. Floor-to-ceiling windows frame the lake and city that have always been my home. On the credenza behind my desk, family photos now stand prominently alongside business awards, no longer separate worlds, but complementary parts of a whole life. My phone rings, Marissa, confirming Sunday dinner at her place. As I answer, I catch my reflection in the window. My smile comes easy now, unguarded. Sometimes the greatest gift isn't money or fame, it's living truthfully, and letting the people you love see it.